Welcome back to Mason Talks. So it is official. The newest head coach of your Cleveland Browns, the 19th head coach in franchise history, Todd Monken, former offensive coordinator, most recently of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, to be quite honest with you, this is a move that I did not see coming, and I don't think very many Browns fans saw coming, to be honest with you. While, yes, Todd Monken was one of the finalists, which is something we've known for at least a week now, it really seemed as though this race were coming down to either Los Angeles Rams passing game coordinator Nate Scheelhaase or current Browns defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz. And the fan base was really split between those two guys, the young up-and-coming offensive mind or the defensive coordinator, the seasoned vet in Jim Schwartz. So the Browns went right down the middle, of course. They got the seasoned, grizzled offensive coordinator who's going to be 60 years old before he coaches a game for this team. And yes, this was a surprising move, at least to me. I mean, maybe some people predicted this from the very beginning. But I'm not completely depressed about this move. I actually think that Todd Monken could end up being a fine head coach for the Cleveland Browns because he is the exact type of head coach that you need. The Browns needed a change offensively, whether that be philosophically, schematically, whatever. I mean, yes, they need more talent. Yes, they need better play from the quarterback position. Yes, they probably need 5 new starting offensive linemen. But I think if you strip it down to the studs, the Browns needed some new organization to their offense. They needed something that wasn't Kevin Stefanski's philosophy, wasn't Kevin Stefanski's scheme. I think that it ran its course with this Browns team, and obviously we'll see how Kevin does in Atlanta. But I think the Browns they needed a little bit of a shot of rejuvenation for this offense. And when you talk about offensive minds in the league, it's undeniable Todd Monken is one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL right now. I mean, he undoubtedly is. You look at what he's done in Baltimore, and there's a reason why John Harbaugh was basically willing to get fired instead of letting Todd Monken get fired. You look at what he's done in Baltimore. When he took over, since he's taken over, Todd Monken, you have Lamar Jackson winning the MVP, which happened in 2023. Wasn't even Lamar's best year. 2024, the Ravens lead the league in offense. They lead the entire NFL in offense. That, of course, comes under Todd Monken. Then this past season, obviously not a great year for Baltimore, especially by Baltimore standards. And yet the team was just good enough. What did they start? 0-3, 1-4, something like that. Ridiculous. Browns level record there, but they were able to really resurrect their season and keep things together. And yes, that's a credit to John Harbaugh, but it's also a credit to Todd Monken, who's a key member of that coaching staff. And, what he's done in Baltimore alone, to be quite honest with you, if you're just comparing offensive minds, like you look at 2020 Kevin Stefanski versus 2026 Todd Monken, I think you take Monken every single time. He's proven to be a better offensive mind than Kevin Stefanski. And while, yes, that does not mean everything, your strength as a coordinator does not correlate necessarily to your strength as a head coach. I think that's ridiculously clear. If you look at the NFL and the history of the NFL, Kevin Stefanski's a good head coach, and it doesn't even necessarily have anything to do with his play calling or schematics. I think he just handles the job well. But you look at this Browns team, they need a rejuvenated offense. They needed a change of scenery for those guys and the young talent that you have, whether it's Harold Fannin, Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson. Like you needed something new. You needed a new scheme. You needed just a change. There needed to be a change. And in terms of the offensive minds that you could get, I think you would rank Todd Monken right up there. The reasoning as to why you would want Nate Scheelhaus is very similar as to why you'd want Todd Monken. He comes from a good team. He comes from a good culture. And, he's somebody that you hope can rejuvenate your offense. So all those pieces are there. I mean, those are the facts that are undeniable about Todd Monken. Now, also undeniable, something that I mentioned briefly. Before he even coaches a game with the Cleveland Browns, before he even coaches a game as a head coach at the NFL level, he will be 60. He will turn 60 years old before he coaches his first game. And that is not necessarily the end-all be-all. However, there have been very few coaches in the history of the NFL to get their first head coaching job past the age of 60 and be successful. I mean, the names who come to mind, and these guys weren't exactly 60. They might have been a little bit younger, but the names that come to mind are like Bruce Arians in Arizona, who didn't get his first head coaching shot until, towards the end of his career. And he ended up being a good head coach. Mike Zimmer in Minnesota, he had to be, a coordinator and position coach for a long time before he became head coach. And he was pretty successful in terms of, playoff wins and getting to NFC title games as head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, those are the two names that I kept coming up with most frequently in terms of a 60 or near 60-year-old head coach who got their first job at the age of 60. I mean, obviously, you look at Mike McCarthy, he's around the same age as Todd Monken, but like Mike McCarthy's been in the business as a head coach forever. For 2 decades. So that's the key thing going against Todd Monken, and I think that's the main point of hesitancy, other than the questions that come up with Jim Schwartz. And a lot of people when this news first broke were suggesting that this was a Jimmy Haslam move, to give you your offensive coach while also trying to keep Jim Schwartz as part of the team. That does not appear to be the case as of yet. It kind of looks like Jim Schwartz wants out of Cleveland, and he might try to, kick and scream his way out of Cleveland. But, I just want to get back on my soapbox for a minute and point out the fact that if the Browns had, like, I would say part of my Todd Monken elation is simply due to the fact that I'm relieved that we didn't hire Jim Schwartz as head coach. Like, listen, Todd Monken could be a one and done. That's completely reasonable. You're coming in with Andrew Berry, who's going to be on his second head coach. It is completely feasible that this team's just not good enough. It's a total mess in 2026-27, and Jimmy Haslam opts to clean house entirely a year from now. That is 1 billion% feasible. However, what Todd Monken gives you that Jim Schwartz would not have given you is potential. I mean, there is potential that Todd Monken could be your diamond in the rough Bruce Arians type. There is potential that he could be a head coach and that he's been worthy of head coaching, offers for a long time, and the Browns were just the first team to give him that shot. Todd Monken legitimately has potential to be a good head coach, a successful head coach for the Cleveland Browns. Jim Schwartz didn't. And that's why it's just so difficult for me to wrap my mind around the Jim Schwartz obsession, because people wanted Jim Schwartz. They wanted to give Jim Schwartz the head coaching job just to keep him on the team, just to keep him for his influence over the defensive unit. And, Jim's done a great job. He's done a great job with this Browns defense. It's one of the best units in the league. But if that's your reasoning for hiring Jim Schwartz, a guy who has been an abject failure as a head coach in the NFL in the past, a guy who had Matthew Stafford, one of the best quarterbacks still in the league, a guy who had Calvin Johnson, a top 5 wide receiver in the history of the league. He had legitimate tools on that Lions team, and they couldn't win. Their best year was 10-6 and a wild card loss. That was the best season. And, he had, the record was like, his overall record was somewhere in the realm of 29-52. Like, that's what we're going to sign up for just because we want him to be our defensive coordinator? Think about how ridiculous that is. We want to keep our defensive coordinator so bad that we're willing to make him head coach, even though he sucked as the head coach of the Detroit Lions. How ridiculous was that logic? When you look at Todd Monken, at least you can say, maybe, you have the shot of a diamond in the rough. Jim Schwartz, Jim Schwartz, I would have been willing to bet money would be fired 1 year after. To the day, 1 year after becoming head coach of the Browns. He would have been the clearest one and done, like, in the history of the league. It would have been the worst hire in the history of the Cleveland Browns, honestly. Even worse than Freddie Kitchens, to be completely frank with you. Todd Monken's not that. Todd Monken's probably one of the better head coaching hires that the Browns have had. Definitely one of the better head coaching hires by Jimmy Haslam. You think about Todd Monken versus Mike Pettin, Tom versus you consider Rob Chudzinski, Todd Monken versus Hugh Jackson. Obviously, like, this is not a train wreck coaching hire. And, like, no, I would like my standards to be higher than that, but Jim Schwartz would have been a train wreck. And Todd Monken's not. Todd Monken's a legitimately good coach. And he has the potential still, a potential that Jim Schwartz doesn't have, keep in mind, to be a good head coach at the NFL level. Now we'll get back off the soapbox and stop talking about Jim Schwartz. I hope Jim leaves. I hope we let him leave. This whole coaching search from Jim Schwartz's perspective, not necessarily the Browns' perspective, but the way that Jim Schwartz and his agent have handled this coaching search has been ridiculous. The way that he's tried to run things, a defensive coordinator who's almost 60 years old, who was horrific in his first head coaching go around. That's the guy who wanted to run your coaching search and run your football team. It's ridiculous. No, I feel pretty good about Todd Monken. Like, I feel like this is a guy who legitimately can come in and run a professional team, run a professional offense, make some good things happen. Like, I think of all the situations you could have gone, if you're not going to get Shieldhouse, which, that's something that still could obviously happen down the road, then Todd Monken was the guy. He was the best coordinator, best offensive mind that you could hire in this cycle. So, I actually think the Browns did a decent job. But let me know in the comments, what do you think of the hiring of Todd Monken? And are you going to be sad to see Jim Schwartz go? Thank you for listening to the Mason Talk Sports Show. Make sure you subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. I will see you in my next episode. Goodbye.